Good evening. Welcome to the daily reflection from Salisbury Cathedral for this day, which is the 29th of December 2020. I'm Canon Nigel Davies, the Vicar of the Close. Just before Christmas, the Dean was speculating about what we should perhaps reflect upon during this Christmas season. He suggested that we reflect upon the 12 Days of Christmas, the song, because that's featured greatly in the Christmas trees around the town. And so it would be my lot to be talking to you about 5 gold rings, which is today's part of the song. And I tried to find out a little bit about what this song was entailed, but sadly I saw from yesterday's reflection the Canon treasurer already has given you some clues as to exactly what the 12 Days of Christmas song is about. I found out much or more or less the same things as he did, so presumably we both used Google to good effect. But it was a song and it was part of a game, and it was a bit like a game, I don't know if you've ever played it, My Grandfather's Chest, in which you enumerate a great number of different things, and it's a memory thing. So you actually have to remember what was in the chest, and the game is played until the last person or forgets what it was that was in that chest, and therefore they are knocked out. So it's a game of remembering, and so that the 12 Days of Christmas was a game of remembering. It also struck me that the 5 gold rings, which I saw a picture of, reminded me very much of the Olympic rings. Similarly, there are 5 of them, but that's a modern departure from the song. So, having failed to find anything really deeply meaningful and wonderful to say about these 12 Days of Christmas, apart from the fact that it seemed that in medieval times there were 12 days of feasting, and every day was a different day of eating and drinking heartily. But then that was in the days when there was a lot of austerity, or when there was a lot of poverty, and it was in the days when the monasteries had power, and their monks often had to go without food during the rest of the year, and so it was an excuse for them to celebrate and, I suppose, to fortify themselves and build up their reserves for continued abstinence moving off into Lent. Back in the day, when I was a parish priest, at Christmas time, one of the things that people seemed to enjoy was something which we called a celebration of Christmas. It was a move away from the standard Christmas carol service and was a way of integrating modern poems and different other parts, different other readings to actually celebrate what Christmas means. And often we had contributions from schools and from a brass band and from a poet. And it was a way that we were able to celebrate the whole range of things that Christmas means to different folk. But invariably, it turned round to the Christian understanding, and it turned round to perhaps being a more serious bent. There were jokes, there were funny poems, there were funny songs, but ultimately it usually ended up with a sense of seriousness as we went through the service. And I was always scouring to find different books of poems, different readings to enhance and make sure that each year it wasn't a repeat of the same thing, but there was a different interpretation or different readings giving a different perspective. And one of the books that I unearthed, and sadly really never had time to use very much, was this book by Wendy Cope called Family Values. And in it, there are 2 or 3 lovely poems which would have suited a celebration of Christmas. And so I want to share one of them with you this evening, because I think it actually sums up some of the more difficult things about Christmas celebrations. Christmas is a time when we are all supposed to be jolly and happy and gathered, which obviously we didn't do this year, but there is an emphasis on being happy and being merry and having a good time and enjoying ourselves. And this poem by Wendy Cope rather points out that not everybody at Christmas is having a good time. That was in the good days when Christmas was a marvellous event, not like the Christmas we've just had this time because of the pandemic. This is a reflection upon some of the things that some of the people who were not merry at Christmas time. It's called a Christmas song. Why is the baby crying on this his special day, when we have brought him lovely gifts and laid him on the hay? He's crying for the people who greet this day with dread, because somebody dear to them is far away or dead. For all the men and women whose love affairs went wrong, who try their best at merriment when Christmas comes along. For separated parents, whose turn it is to grieve, while children hang their stockings up elsewhere on Christmas Eve. For everyone whose burden carried through the year is heavier at Christmas time, the season of good cheer. That's why the baby's crying there in the cattle stall. He's crying for those people. He's crying for them all. A lovely poem, a very serious poem, and it addresses those issues around which many people find Christmas a difficult time. And then I would come across something which was a little amusing but serious, and then I'd find something hopefully a little more heavyweight. And the next poem, which I'm going to conclude this reflection with, is one of those. It's written by Oscar Romero, who people may know was a priest, a Roman Catholic priest in El Salvador, and he spoke out against poverty, social injustice, the assassinations, tortures that occurred there. And sadly, he was also killed, assassinated because of what he said and because of what he did. And today, in the Church's Year, we have also remembered Thomas Becket, who was also killed for being outspoken against power. So this poem that he wrote is called Incarnate, because it's what Christians believe happened at Christmas time. God became incarnate in a human being, in the baby Jesus. And these are the words he wrote about that. Christ became a man of his people and of his time. He lived as a Jew. He worked as a labourer of Nazareth. And since then, he continues to become incarnate in everyone. If many have distanced themselves from the church, it is precisely because the church has often distanced itself from humanity. But a church that can feel as its own all that is human and wants to incarnate the pain, the hope, the affliction of all who suffer and feel joy, such a church will be Christ loved and awaited, Christ present. And that depends on us. It was always good to end the Christmas celebration with a challenge. And so here in Oscar Romero's writing, there is that challenge. Because although we remember and commemorate the baby Jesus growing eventually to be a man, in our day, the only way that we can make real what Jesus's message was by incarnating that within ourselves. And that's the lasting message of Christmas. We as human beings can incarnate all the good that Jesus came to teach us about in our lives. Thanks for watching, and a good evening to you all.